depending on your perspective, the Charlie Kirk investigation is either the most decentralized, highly investigated case in the history of the world, or it is something purposefully being uninvestigated, or even worse, possibly hidden and covered up. Let's talk more about it. Hey friends, welcome back to Intentional Motherhood. I'm your host, Kelsey, and before we get started, I want to remind you to like the show, subscribe, follow so that you get notifications, and of course check show notes to get on my email list so that you're aware of upcoming events, especially our prayer-focused Bible study that will be starting sometime at the beginning of the year. I would love for you to be involved with that. It's going to be a great study program. Also, a reminder, I'll be taking a few weeks off around the holidays and we'll be coming back mid-January, and I'll let you know more about that in next week's show before we enjoy the rest of our December, our Christmas time with our families. So I told you that this episode today was going to be a recap of the Charlie Kirk investigation because we are now, as of this recording, exactly 3 months to the day from the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And this investigation has gone so many directions. I thought I was going to be able to recap, but literally so much new information comes out every day that I can't even recap, because by the time you're listening, there will be more to say and it will be more confusing. So rather than getting bogged down in the details of the investigation, which you can spend hours and hours binging through many amazing podcasters who are doing very thorough investigations, such as, of course, Candace Owens, Ian Carroll, Baron Coleman, Coach Colin, Dee Dee got a podcast. All of these people are doing amazing work investigating this, and rather than trying to rehash some of what they're saying, I actually want to take a different perspective, a perspective on how does this affect us women as moms raising the next generation? What does this mean for us? What does this mean for the future of our country, for the children that we're raising, and what we want to teach them, what principles we want them to glean from this tragedy, and how do we even talk about that? So that's kind of the direction we're going to go. I will say the first major implication that I want to talk about is the need to teach our children to question everything. I think past generations have been more comfortable with the prospect of just taking what they hear from authorities as the undeniable truth and just going with that. And of course, that occurs from not having multiple media sources like we have at this point in the internet and worldwide communication, instant communication. But the idea of a few major news sources being able to collectively spread one narrative, and that's the only information that the populace can get, and therefore we all believe it because that's all we know. We can't do any of our own investigations, so we just have to agree with it and go with it. I think the time for that has passed. I think the fact that now literally anyone can be an independent investigator and can do actually really amazing work. I mean, I think of Mel, the village crazy lady, the work she's doing as a mommy sleuth. I think of, Ian Carroll, who started out as a very grassroots researcher, Baron Coleman, who's podcasting out of his office on his evenings outside of his day job. These people are all just doing what they know how to do. They're taking their expertise and they're creating a new narrative and creating new information, legitimate breaking news. And for that reason alone, I think we need to be helping our children understand as they grow up, as they're learning, especially if we're homeschooling like I am and like a lot of my listeners are, that you can do your own research. You have the right and the responsibility to do your own research, to come to conclusions on your own, and to question everything. And this leads me a little bit into my next point, which is that Tucker Carlson said it actually perfectly today in a just quick 5-minute video that he released, clarifying a bit about his explanation that he didn't necessarily believe the FBI in this Charlie Kirk investigation, which he stated in his interview with Theo Vaughn a few days ago. He then came on and made a quick video to even clarify further. And in that, he stated that we don't have a moral obligation to trust the FBI or even the government. And that was really interesting to me, especially considering his background, considering he has some very intimate knowledge of the workings of the government and the CIA and the FBI and close ties to that. And yet he said we don't have a moral obligation to trust them. In fact, we have a responsibility to do what we were just talking about and do some independent researching and to actually require that our FBI that we pay for be transparent and held accountable for the quality of their investigation. And now that as a people, we have the ability to communicate with our government through even just the means of X or social media, and the fact that the numbers of viewership is showing where the people are putting their time and their trust. That's almost like our vote at this point. That's our way to show our voice. That's our way to show what we will and won't accept. So again, this is something that I feel we may need to emphasize as we're raising children and going into the future generations, that you don't have a moral obligation to trust your government. The government works for you, and you need to actually hold the people in positions of leadership to higher standards of transparency and accountability. And again, taking this a step further, it kind of leads into my next point, which is we also have a responsibility to teach our children to have moral fortitude and the strength of character to stand up for what's right. Because there is plenty of reason to be fearful of standing up for what you believe in, especially if you feel like that's going to be attacked, or it's going to cause you to be called names, or you're going to lose friends and followers over it. And yet, what is more important than to teach our children to keep their souls intact and to tell them that no amount of bribery, whether it's friends or likes or followers or money, can shift what I believe to be true and what I will stand up for. And I say this because obviously we're all just raising kids right now, and it doesn't seem like a big deal, but some of us are raising future leaders. Statistically, that has to be the case. Some of the children that we are raising at this point will grow up to be political figures, maybe even just community leaders. And we have to start teaching in the home this kind of integrity, because that's the only power we have at this point. Sometimes with all of this going on, I start to feel really discouraged and hopeless and helpless. And part of that is because I feel like, what can I do? What can I do? What does my little voice and non-existent political position, what difference can I make? And it always comes back to the fact that we make the difference in our homes. That is where it starts. Because if enough of the parents around the nation and the world are emphasizing integrity and morality and truth and righteousness to their children, and that's how the future leaders of our country and our world are developed, then there will be a tipping point where we start to see good overtake evil. It feels like that tipping point is coming. It feels like the polarization is happening, where we're seeing the division isn't between black or white or male or female or left or right. The division is between good and evil. And we have to remember that. And we have to remember that when we see all the infighting between, the conservative party. We have to remember that when we see people attacking people's characters just because they don't agree with each other and because they don't like what the other person is saying. All of this is so antithetical to what Charlie Kirk stood for. What he stood for was having conversations with those that you disagree with respectfully, civilly. And that's what we have to come back to, is reminding everyone that we have rights. We have rights to speak what we believe. Even if we disagree, we can do it respectfully. And we can make sure that our number one priority is to uphold truth and righteousness and integrity. So when it seems like this Charlie Kirk investigation is actually so much deeper than just the investigation into one man's murder, it feels like every new thing that is uncovered just uncovers another layer of evil within the broader context of world government. That is admittedly scary, and it's scary to think of the world that we're raising our children in. And all I can come back to is this focus on, I can teach my children to stand up for what's right. I can teach my children to be kind and respectful, to disagree civilly, to stand up for what's right and be honest and be true no matter what the situation is. Because if that's where I start in my home with my 6-year-olds and my 4-year-old, then they will grow into teenagers and adults and potentially out there somewhere listening leaders who still have a moral, ethical code of integrity and righteousness. And that's the best we can do. And we just have to remember that this is our most important influence. And let them see us setting the example of standing up for what we believe in and standing for truth and defending our rights and our freedoms, the freedoms and the liberties that our country was founded on. All right, well, that's all I've got for you today, and I just wanted to kind of give you that update because, like I said, if you're following the investigation, you know that I can't even possibly, how do I even start to talk about the Egyptian planes and the secret high-profile meeting and the planes that were carrying VIP government officials, and where this all leads and how it ties into the broader powers throughout the world. And I hope you're following it on your own. And like I said, we all have the right to question everything. We all have the right to decide that we're going to research, and we all have the right to present evidence for and against what we're hearing. We have just as much right to hear evidence for why Tyler Robinson acted alone in this assassination as we do to look for evidence of why he did not. In fact, this is the whole point of the judicial system, is to weigh out any possibilities, because if there is a defense in the Tyler Robinson case that cannot hold up to scrutiny, then he should not be put to death for it. He should not be in prison the rest of his life. That's not how the justice system works. But if you can look at the Egyptian planes coming in and out of the country and high-profile secret meetings and say, yes, we looked thoroughly into them and we are able to now know conclusively that they had nothing to do with the Charlie Kirk assassination, then great. Now we know. Now we can feel confident that we're serving justice properly. As Bluey says, if you're going to do something, do it properly. And that's all we're asking for in this investigation. And with that Bluey quote, I will sign off. And I appreciate you being here with me on this episode of Intentional Motherhood. I will be back next week to tell you a little bit about what we have planned for the new year. And then we will take a few weeks off to enjoy the holidays. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time on Intentional Motherhood. Don't forget, you are doing the most important job